Well, let's set up the serger ready for the threading and serging. No matter what model you have, obviously we need to plug it in to the power source, and we also need to plug in the foot pedal. Some of the models, the power cord and the foot pedal are separate. That will be in case of Triumph and Ovation. And then all the others, the power cord and foot pedal are connected at one end. You just plug this in. It only goes in one way. And no matter what model we have, we will just turn the power on. Power switch can be found right beside where the power goes in a machine, that beside the plug. Then next thing we need to do is to pull the antenna all the way up. Searchers, we like to have the antenna all the way up because the machines can run really fast, and that will give them a smoother run for the thread. So not just halfway, pull it all the way up. If you had an 8-thread searcher, like Ovation, Triumph, Accolade, Evolution, Evolve Wave, all of those searchers, when they came from the factory, the thread extension stand was separate. Just so that the machine fitted into a bit smaller box. So if you don't have that plugged in, go ahead and put it into the back of the machine. There are little slots in the back of the permanent thread stand, and the extension has little clips. You just push them in, it'll click in place. You can remove it also if you need to. It's a little bit tricky. It's quite tight, so you need to put your hands underneath the little levers on that thread extension, squeeze it and pull it back. So if you have a bit smaller case carrying case for your machine, then you can take it out so it won't break. But I leave my machine mostly at home, so I just have mine permanently attached. I just put a couple extra pieces on this last slide also, just to notice that I had not mentioned earlier about the sewing speed controller that can be found on Ovation and Triumph models. With all our machines, we can control the sewing speed by amount of how much we push on the foot pedal. But Triumph and Ovation searchers have also this controller that if I want to make sure that my machine don't run too fast, I can put it halfway or even a very slow speed. So those are the only ones we have a little extra speed controller. But then also a Triumph and Ovation, we have a knee lever. That is really, really handy tool. I like using it a lot. It gives me that third hand when I'm sometimes holding my piece of fabric with two hands, and then I need to be able to lower my pressure foot. So the knee lever on the searchers, all it does is it lowers the pressure foot. It does not run the machine. We use the foot pedal for that one. Well, then the thread in the machine. When you open the front covers, and I will go in a live video a little bit more on this part also, but just going quickly through on this machine. I have a picture, an image taken from the Triumph manual, but it has a really good indication of all of those different threading ports that we have. So if we have an 8-thread searcher, any 8-thread searchers, we have 3 loopers, so we have threading ports for all the loopers, and they're clearly marked for upper looper, lower looper, and a chain looper. If you have a 4-thread searcher, you wouldn't have the chain looper, and we're not going to talk about that anyway in today's class. These are threading ports, and they even have a note saying, do not oil. I joke in the classes that we should also say in there that do not spit. So if you have a tendency to lick your ends of your threads before threading and your needles, do not lick on this case, because we don't want anything extra going onto those threading tubes to potentially block the tubes, because then the thread wouldn't be able to go easily. So I always joke, do not oil and do not spit. Just do a clean cut on a thread tail, push it into about half an inch to an inch inside the threading port, and then air threading will take it from there. If you have some of the models, several of the newer models, we have this push button to thread, and a lever. So on these machines, what I will do is I will lower my lever from the searching to threading position and rotate the hand wheel towards me. This is important that we do both. The threading lever first and then rotate the hand wheel. If you only put the lever and try to push the button, nothing happens unless you just happen to have your threading tubes lined up so that they get engaged. but usually you have to turn your hand wheel and your machine locks. You hear big clonk sound in the machine. What it does is the threading tube, they have a little cap at the moment, and that cap needs to be closed so that when we push the thread going through, it'll go all the way to the loopers. We can't have it just pulling inside the machine. We have to get it going all the way to the loopers. That is why the machines that have the push to thread button, that won't even run if you don't have it in the right position. So lower the lever, rotate the hand wheel until the machine locks, and then you can push the button. You can thread all the loopers at the same time or one at a time. Either way will work. If you have machines that have a more mechanical, the original air-jet threading, like Imagine and Victory, those machines, what you need to do is first there's a little push button on the front of the machine. You push that in, hold it down and rotate your hand wheel until the threading tubes will get locked in. And then there is a pump, the lever on the side. And when I pull that lever, that will push the air through and the loopers get threaded. There's also a lever for U and L. So when you thread the upper looper, your lever needs to be at U and a thread on the U port. And then you push the lever, it goes to upper looper. And then you move the lever to L for lower looper and repeat for that one. Just to note that Imagine and Victory, those machines, and also I should also say Eclipse and Celebrate. All of those ones have the original air-jet threading. Those ones, they can be threaded halfway, meaning that if I don't have these tubes connected and I will push the threader, or the thread will just pull inside the machine and it's not going into the looper. So if you start stitching, there's no stitch. So it's always important before you do the threading, whether it is a push button or the lever, that these tubes are connected. Why am I emphasizing it so much? We get a lot of questions about that one. So that's why on my presentation, I try to emphasize some of those things that will get lots of questions. So after we got the loopers threaded, then we would go through the quick reference guide of obviously to tell how we're going to be threading it. And important also on the quick reference guide is that when you thread your serger, do your settings first and then do the threading. And I go in a live video a little bit more detail on this one also. But we need to make sure that all our settings are correctly first before we go to threading. And then one of those settings is the stitch selector. And some models it's on the side on like a big ABCD, and some of the ones it's have to open the front cover to access that one. But we'll just select the stitch that we are using, and then I'm just going to put in here as a reminder, correct use the hand wheel. Normally we only go towards. I'm going to later on some of the other class videos. So when could we also go backwards? But normally we always, like a sewing machine, you rotate it that towards you. And here's a more real photograph on the 8-thread serger, the ports that you can see. This really is from the Ovation and Triumph. Those sergers, we have an extra section on this one also. But any 8-thread serger, this is how the threading ports would look like. And then the Enlighten and Acclaim, they will look exactly the same, except we don't have the chain looper port. Ovation and Triumph, we have these little bypass areas also for the loopers. These are only used with very thick threads. So one of those classes I'll be showing a little bit on how to use heavier threads. So then I'll show how to use those ones also. But your normal threads, they go through the threading tubes. Now I have an image in here, actually 2 images taken from the quick reference guides. One is from the Triumph and one is either, that might be Imagine or then maybe Victory. On this one, I have picked up the 4-thread overlock stitch settings because the first examples in this first class, we really are only going to be using this stitch. Later on, we use some of the other stitches on my other classes. So no matter which machine you have, we all can do this stitch. And always kind of on my class, I try to emphasize that go through the checklist first. So we'll go through the list and then we'll do the threading. It is important, especially with the 8-thread sergers, because you might have been doing some cover stitching. And on cover stitch, there's a little lever that we may have pushed it down on a down position. And if I now just start threading the machine for the overlock side with threading it first and then going through the checklist, my threads are not in the right spot. So that is why I always emphasize, go through the checklist first and then the threading. And on my image, on my little slide in here, I also had settings that I'd like to use on my first sample for my exercise. Because length and width on any of these machines, they just give us a range. The range that is most common for that stitch. We can use the entire range all the way from 1 millimeter to 4 millimeters. But I put on my slide what I'd like those to be set for my first class, for my first exercise. But going through first on this ones, we need to have 2 needles. And if it has an 8-thread machine, they are called O1 and O2 for overlock needles. Then if you have a 4-thread machine, they're just called left and right. But we need both needles, and here's even a picture of that one. Then the length and width, again, I want to have the length to be at 3 millimeters, and I put a note on this one as saying standard. That lever, the stitch length, that little knob, that's the larger knob. If you think of letter L, length is larger knob. So that larger knob and all the machines, it is in the same spot. That one has 2 sides. There's a standard and rolled hem. For this stitch, we need to have it on the standard side because we have number 3 on that knob also on a rolled hem side. We'll talk about that one on number 2 class. So make sure it's on a standard side and put it at 3 millimeters. The width, that knob is the smaller knob, which is beside the knife blade. And again, if you think the W, width is the V knob. The V knob and the L for the large knob for length and width. That one, all it does is moves the knife further or closer to the needle. So in this one, we have 2 sets of numbers again. I'll explain it a little bit more in my live when we do an exercise playing with that knob. But that one I'd like to use at the moment on my exercise to be at 6.5 millimeters. So pick that little knob and this little arrow showing where to put this one. Next one we have stitch selector. And all the machines, for this stitch, it says A. Because we don't have tension dials, yeehaw, no tensions. So this one, we're just going to tell the machine what stitch we are doing. And how we tell it is with the stitch selector and also how it is threaded. So put that to A. If you have a machine with a wave stitch, we need to make sure that that lever in the front there says overlock. Because when you move your machine around, you may have accidentally flipped that switch over. And if you start doing this stitch when it is set for wave, yes, the machine will show, but it is very, very ugly looking stitch. So again, that's why we go through the checklist first. We have everything set correctly. The next 2 ones, the chain looper and the chain needle tensions, don't worry about those ones. We're not using them on this stitch. That's the number 4 class. And then the next row, and this is only that is on the 8-thread sergers. We have the upper looper selector. So anytime you are doing overlock side, anytime you have thread there, you need to have this one up. And then I'd also like to have my blade up. The 8-thread machines, we need to use the knife cover because we can, for the cover stitch side, we can replace this with the sewing table. But we need to have a knife cover. And all the sergers, we need to have the subsidiary looper disengaged. So it's a little piece that is attached onto the upper looper. Make sure that that is not over the looper eye, but it is away from it. So those are the important things that we need to have. I'm gonna go through the threading on this machine. So this stitch, I'll be using a 4-thread overlock. So I will need to go on my threading guide.
If you have an 8-thread serger, everything's color coded. You see, sometimes we have a gold color on the top, sometimes we have a green color, sometimes maybe both. It just shows that on this page, I will have all the chain cover stitches. So anything on my machine that is related for the cover stitch side has a gold text. So there's a gold text, there's a gold text, there's a gold. So everything kind of related for that one has that gold color. So I know as a quick glance that this would be for my chain and cover. And then all of these ones with the green. So again, we have green, and the thread standing also on the top will show on the green colors. That will tell me right away that I'll be using my overlock side of the machine. If it's a combination colors, that means that it's a combination of the cover stitch and the chain stitch. And then this is a place I can find also my wave stitches and some more the combination stitches. There are more combination stitches that are shown here because we have 87 stitch combinations, so they wouldn't fit all into this, but I can combine any overlock with any cover and I can have all those combinations. So I'll be doing the 4-thread overlock. So the first thing my machine says that I need to have needles 01 and 02. Well, at the moment I only have one needle in the machine. So I need to take that needle, I need to add another needle there. I find often that if I have my covers open, and how you open those covers is just pull this one, the bigger cover towards you. This other one has a little lever. I can pull it side, and then I will pull towards me. So on this one, then I have much more access, especially the machines that doesn't have the 5-inch opening like my machine has. But also I find that if I move my in this case, my looper out of the way, so I will rotate the hand wheel a bit, so that way my looper is a bit out of the way. But also, especially in the beginning, you may want to even take the foot off. In the back of the foot, there's a little metal lever. I will push that one and the foot will come out. If I try to pull it towards this way, the knife is fighting, because I could drop the knife too, but also the little springs that will kind of catch on. So I find that the easiest way to get it out is from the side. It still feels a bit stuck. Well, we have on our pressure foot lifter, we have down, up, and extra lift. So I give a little extra lift, I can pull it easily to the left. So to put the foot back in, I usually take it between my index finger and the thumb, and I go from the side. And I just need to snap the foot on this little bar, and it is that center bar on the foot that will snap on. So I'm going to slide it from the side, and if I have trouble sliding it in, I can give a little extra lift it also. I can also use my knee lever for that one. And then I will just lower the pressure foot. And if it didn't snap, at the moment I didn't have it lined up exactly, so I can see a little gap. And if I try to lift my pressure foot, I notice it's not caught. So now I actually heard a little snap on it. So it was just ever so slightly off. Sometimes when I put it in, when I snap, if I don't get it exactly, and of course now when I try to not to snap it, it'll catch on me. So if I have it so that I don't catch it exactly, okay, here we go. So that case, I can also just take the toe of the foot and pull it a little bit towards me, and it snaps in place. Lots of times I see people really hitting the pedal really hard, or the foot lever very hard. It's like, no, we don't need a bigger hammer. We just have to line it up properly. So very gently I can lower this lever, put it over, and snap the foot in place. Again, more you use it, easier it gets. So in this case, I'm gonna take the foot out of place because I have more space to work here. Again, I could also lower my knife, which is the lever right in the front. So now I have plenty of space to work, to change the needles. So let me find my needle. I had put one aside. And talking about the needles, the machine came with the packet. This machine has a cover stitch and an overlock. So I have the ELX 705 needles. These are the needles that came with the machine. And I look like I only used one needle. Well, I have actually used lots of my others. I buy them on a bigger packages also. So here's the ELX 705 from the Smiths. This comes on only two sizes, 8012 and 9014. The smaller number is a thinner needle for the medium to lightweight fabrics, and then the 9014 is for the medium to heavyweight fabrics. So those are the different kind of types of needles. On my little needle holder, a little compartment in there, I also have some clamor needles. This one has a really large eye. I use these ones with those heavier threads when I use on the decoratives, on the overlock side only. But these ones I can't put on a cover stitch side on this machine. But if you have a 4-thread serger, you can use these ones also, as long as I don't go any larger than 9014. So I have lots of options there. Let me get a couple other tools. And one of my favorite needles are Microtex. These are actually Microtex needles that I have. And because I like them so much, I get them in a packs of 100. I use them a lot on my sewing machine also. These ones in here are from the Class. They work perfectly on the machine also. In this example, I have at the moment in my machine both of the overlock needles in the machine. To take those needles out, I can use my little handy brush. And then the other end of the brush, I have a hole that I can place it inside. And then I can loosen the screw. My machine has places for 5 needles, so I have a Allen key. The one that comes with the machine has a red handle. I lost mine, so I'm using the one that came with my multi-needle. It's the same size. And then when I pull the needle out, it won't fall inside the machine. If it did fall in, there's a little tray that it most likely would land. And some of the machines even has a magnet on it, so it will land on that magnet. But if I use the little brush, then it won't land in. Other option, of course, you could put a piece of fabric or a piece of paper also underneath. To put this needle in, it's important that I don't go sideways because I couldn't really get it easily in there. I need to keep it totally kind of this knife pointing, the brush pointing towards me. And I want to make sure that the flat side of the needle is in the back. So I put my finger behind and I place the tip, hopefully I'm keeping my hands away from the camera, put the tip of that needle between those stitch fingers and I go straight up. And then when I push it up, I can see the butt of the needle just showing up on this little window. I need to make sure that my needle's all the way up before I tighten it. And yes, these needles on the overlock side are not at the same height. It's just the way the serger operates, that when the loopers go behind and in front of the needle, they need to go an angle a bit. So that's why these needles are at the different heights. So if you try to lower this left needle to match this other needle eye, you'll get most likely skip stitches on this side. So make sure that they are all the way up. That's why we need to use the right needle system also, so that they are the right length. So one way was to use the brush to take one individually out. Another way to do is to hold both of these needles with your fingers, loosen both screws, and then we can take both needles out at the same time. Doug Thompson from Baby Lock has put a really good video about a year ago that he shows this much better than I can do it. He has much better view on a camera. So to put this back in, I'm just holding them side by side and the flat side of the needle is in the back. I put the tips of the needle on the between the stitch fingers and I just go straight up, tighten the screws. So I can put easily 2 needles at the same time. And if I have the cover stitch side, I could put all 3. But it helps to have the foot off the machine and then lower the knife also. There's plenty space to work on. So that was just a little tips, different ways to how to change the needles, because we need to learn to change those needles. They do get dull, so need to be we'll get lots of practice for that one. My setting started was to go through to put my 2 needles in the machine. Then it says the stitch length and the width. Well, I wanted my exercise to have the stitch length, those covers. I wanted this to be at 3 on the standard side, and the length I want to have it at 6.5. I'll go through a little bit more detail what those numbers mean, but that's what I wanted them at the moment. This is the typical range. But then one of the non-negotiables is my stitch selector. So this stitch, I need to have it at A. And then my wave selector, if you have a machine with a wave stitch, I need to make sure that this down position, it says overlock. And then those couple don't matter. I'm not using them at the moment. Then the stitch, the blade position on this one, we need to have the blade up. So I'm going to unlock it. When I unlock it, the knife didn't come up yet. It won't come up until I rotate the hand wheel a couple times, couple rotations. Now my knife is up. When I rotate the lever, it goes down all the way and it says lock. To unlock it and rotate the hand wheel, gets my knife working again. There we go. Then the next one, it tells in here for this, again, 8-thread sergers, we had these little extra pieces that we need to have this knife cover. Because like I said, on the cover stitch side, we would replace this knife cover with the cover stitch sewing table. Plug that one in. There we go. And then subsidiary looper. That is a little piece attached onto my upper looper. I need to make sure that it is not engaged. The rule is, if there is thread, you can't have that in that hole. If there's no thread on the 2-thread stitches, number 3 class, then we're gonna put it there. But you need to make sure that it's not engaged at the moment, like the arrow points. So now we go through the checklist. Then we can thread the machine, and we need to make sure that our threads go onto these slots. That's the reason why in the factory they put lots of places. They marked in the spool stand for where to put the upper looper and the lower looper and the needle threads, but they didn't put it in here. The reason why they didn't put stickers or labels on that part was because the threads don't always go on these locations. Sometimes when we do threading, the needle thread might go on this slot. So that's the reason why it's important to go through the checklist first and then go through my threading chart. This same picture is in the manual, a lot larger print. So in the beginning, you may want to refer your manual, but later on, this kind of becomes very handy because everything is in this one page. Great thing on the, and we have the air jet threading. We don't really care what order we thread it. So we can thread the needles first and then the loopers, or loopers first and then needles, doesn't matter. So I'm gonna start on this machine by threading them on, putting the spools on the spool holders. I'm kind of short. When I'm sitting in front of the machine, I have sometimes hard time reaching all the way up. So I'm gonna pause the recording and then I'm gonna move the camera a bit further out so I can show what I'm doing next. Okay, to thread the machine, I have put on my machine 4 spools of thread. On my thread stand, I have places for 8 spools. So I put them onto the green icons that say overlock needle 1, overlock needle 2, and upper looper and a lower looper. And I use different colors so you'll see better on the screen. So that's the reason for my odd coloration. And then I have my antenna all the way up, and I cut the threads and put them onto these little thread holders. And then I'm gonna go and snap the threads in the back of these little holders. It's important that you catch it on this one. And when I go to thread, you'll hear little snaps on those ones, because that keeps the threads on the right spot. So let me move the camera just a little bit back, and then I can go in front of it. Doesn't matter what order I do this, but I often take them like a dental floss, and I need to make sure my pressure foot is up. On my machine, it is in the, on the right side. Ovation, it is in the front, and also I'll claim it is on the side. All others, it's in the behind the foot. So just make sure your pressure foot is up. Even though we don't have tension dials or tensions on this area, we need to have the pressure foot up so that all the gates are open to accept the thread in the right spot. So I'll take the thread like a dental floss, and I will snap. You hear a snap, and I lay my thread down. That's my left needle. That will be my right needle. In this case, upper looper and a lower looper. Well, I used a quick reference guide to tell me exactly where to put those threads. So now I'm ready to go for threading. So I'm going to put my machine to threading. And often people tell me in a class, oh, my machine is not threading when I push the button. Well, it's not threading at the moment because my threading tubes are not lined up. So if it was able to thread, all the threads would line up right inside the machine. We need to get them through the eyes or the loopers for the stitch to form. If you have an Imagine or Celebrate that has the little mechanical lever, those ones you'll have to push the little button, rotate the hand wheel to get these little tubes in place. Because those ones, the mechanical lever will still work and push the thread inside the machine, but it wouldn't be in the right spot. So you need to make sure that the machine is locked for the threading part. So I put my threading down. I'm going to rotate my hand wheel towards me. And I keep rotating until I hear clunk. And now my machine's locked. I can't rotate my hand wheel. And those threading tubes are now connected for my loopers. It doesn't matter what order I thread. So let me get those out of the way. The important thing is that I have enough thread tail. So good rule of thumb is pull them kind of like touching your knee. Because this the thread has to go all the way through the tubes to the loopers. If I don't have enough tail, it's not going to go all the way. And the air is not strong enough to pull it through the machine. So we need to have a bit slack. And I will get those threads just on the little hooks. These machines are the easiest to thread. And then I'm taking just about 1/2 inch of the thread showing. If I take a long tail, it's very hard for me to get this little wobbly thread into that threading port. So if I take it just about on 1/2 inch, the thread stays much straighter out and it will be easy to put in. Again, it says do not oil. I would add do not spit. So we don't want to leak this thread. All I want to do is have a clean cut. That is one reason I always have my little snips in my machine. So I can do a little nice clean cut on that thread tail. And then I will put that about 1/2 inch to 1 inch, the thread tail into that hole. And I'll do the same thing on this one. So make sure that I have a clean cut there also. Oh, there we go. And I will put that onto the lower looper. So upper looper and a lower looper. If I have the extraordinary threading, I can thread all my loopers at one time, or I can do one at a time. If you have the mechanical lever, you will thread one looper at a time. And if you do an upper looper, you need to put the lever to U. If you do the lower looper, put the lever to L and then push the lever. Then they'll go in the right spots. Again, I need to make sure that I have enough thread tail sitting or loose, and then I push to thread the loopers. Upper looper and a lower looper. When I demo the machine in the shop, I often tell, do not blink because you may miss it. Wow, thread it. Just like that one. So here's my lower looper. That's my upper looper. And the lower looper, I can even leave this thread tail inside the machine as long as it's just about like 3 inches or so. No need to take a measuring tape. But if it's very short, it won't catch. So if it is very short, you can pull up it excess. If it's really long, then I have 2 options. I could either cut the excess, or I can take this put also on the top of the machine. On the upper looper, if I had a foot on, you can even have it landed on a foot. I often just take this tail, use the thread cutter on the side, cut that thread tail, and it's a right length. So that was easy. So now to thread the needles. Depending on the machine, you may have a built-in needle threader, or you may have a mechanical needle threader. That's a mechanical built-in or air threader, or then you may have just a totally separate needle threader. Well, how do I thread the needles? My Serger has air threading, but it also comes with a little mechanical threader. I will show you how to use both. The Acclaim and Triumph has this air threading for the needles also. Then the other 8-thread sergers come just with the mechanical little separate needle threader, and then some of the 4-thread sergers, we have a little lever that we will pull down and use that to thread the needles. In this one, I will just get my threads over the take-up lever, get it behind that little hook, and then we trim the tail a little bit shorter. A clean cut again is helpful. I need to make sure my threader, machine, this machine is still on my threading position, meaning that my threading tubes are in place, so that I can pull the needle threader down. On the Imagine and Celebrate machines, those ones you need to make sure that you have lined up your hand wheel on that little green mark before you can use the needle threader. So every machine has a little bit different techniques. So on this one, because we have places for 5 needles, I need to make sure that I have my lever for the needle threader set up for overlock. If I'm using the chain needles, then I will use that one. And then all I have to do is to point this thread tail towards the eye of the needle. And I'm just going to put it right there and push the button, and it sucks the thread in. I was using it just straight without any guide. This machine also comes with a little guide that will help. So I could put this little guard over, and then if I take my next needle thread, and then let me lift the pressure foot up to get more tail. Again, I have a clean cut, and this time I'm just gonna put this thread tail on that little guide. It just makes it a little bit easier for me to aim that needle thread. I can push it in. Oops, I didn't have it all lined up. I'm trying to keep my hands and head away from the camera. So let me just point it down there and put it, and it will suck it in. And then I pull the lever up. Because I threaded this part of the needle after I put the guide, I need to make sure that I don't pull my thread out of the needle when I pull the guide out. So that's one reason I don't really use this guide very often. I kind of learned it to do without, but it is really helpful, especially in the beginning. Well, how do I use this little needle threader? The main thing with this needle threader is that you need to be gentle with it. It has a tiny, tiny, tiny piece of metal that has to be able to go through the eye of the needle to take the thread and push it through there. So if I'm too rough with it, I can bend it, and then it won't work very well. So I'm gonna take this thread out of the needle, and then I need to make sure that one of these little triangles is always pointing up. And this threader has horizontal slot and a vertical slot. I take my thread horizontal, and I put the threader over that thread. My little arrow is still pointing up, and I will gonna just rotate my hand so that my thread is gonna go in horizontal, and I carefully push the little metal piece against the groove of the needle. And that is when you need to be gentle. Just I barely feel that I'm touching the groove, and when I pull it down, the groove ends to the eye of the needle, and when I push it, it will push that little thread loop through the eye. Some of these little threaders may even have a little hook. I can put this hook and catch the thread loop behind the needle and pull it through. This tool is great. It works beautifully also in a sewing machine, but you have to be very gentle with it. So just to kind of learn to use it when you have good time, that you're not in a rush. Well, now I'm ready to sew, because I need to still put my foot in the machine. Well, most of the sergers, we have little safety features that, like this machine, won't run if I have my doors open. So I will need to close this door and my other door. The machines with the extraordinary threading, I can't even close the door if my machine is not in the searching position. If it's still in the threading position, it won't even close. So now I have it closed. But my machine won't still run because my pressure foot is up. So only the Acclaim and Triumph has this extra safety. All other sergers will run even a pressure foot up, your stitches that won't look very pretty. So always remember to lower your pressure foot before you start serging.